Death, I shall be stronger than you in life!
The Black Scorpion destroys communications. Hundreds annihilated.
There it is now.
Let us start with The Giant Claw from 1957. This movie features something truly special. A flying monster bigger than a battleship that terrorizes the skies above North America. The creature looks like an enormous angry space bird with fur instead of feathers, and a head that resembles a really upset turkey puppet. But here is what makes it fascinating. The special effects team actually built a massive puppet that required 5 people to operate. The actors had to pretend to be terrified while looking at basically nothing, and when they finally saw the finished film, they were just as surprised as the audience at how the monster turned out. The best scene happens when the creature attacks New York City, and you can literally see the strings holding it up against the backdrop. Here's something I would love to know. What do you think was the original inspiration for this bizarre movie monster? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because the truth behind this design is absolutely incredible, and I will reveal it at the end of our journey through these forgotten classics.
Nuclear explosion could free one from his icy tomb. This would be terrorized by the cruel intruder.
Moving on to The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms from 1953. This remarkable film tells the story of a Rediscover, a fictional dinosaur awakened from frozen sleep by nuclear testing in the Arctic Circle. The creature design was groundbreaking for its time, with incredibly detailed stop-motion animation by Ray Harryhausen. The way the monster moves through the streets of Manhattan feels surprisingly natural, especially in the scenes where it crashes through the roller coaster at Coney Island. The attention to detail is amazing. You can see every scale on its body, and the way its tail sweeps through buildings looks incredibly realistic. The sound design team created the monster's roar by combining the sounds of a lion, an eagle, and a whale call, making it truly unique.
Storygoers, here is a wild, headlong flight into
Them, from 1954, brings us something completely different. Giant ants in the New Mexico desert. The movie starts with a little girl wandering through the desert in shock, and when the police finally find her, all she can do is scream, "Them!" The sound design in this film is absolutely brilliant. They created the ant's signature noise by using processed recordings of bird calls and wooden blocks being struck together. The practical effects team built massive ant puppets that stood over 8 feet tall, with antennae that could move independently. There is this incredible scene where the characters are exploring a nest in complete darkness, and all you can hear is this weird chirping sound getting closer and closer. The way they filmed it, using only flashlight beams to illuminate small parts of the tunnel, creates such an intense feeling of claustrophobia.
Man was confronted with his most shocking blunder.
Tarantula, from 1955, remains one of the most effective giant monster movies ever made. Instead of using stop motion or puppets, they filmed real tarantulas crawling over miniature sets, and the result is surprisingly convincing. The movie follows the story of a scientific experiment gone wrong, creating a spider that grows to enormous proportions. The cinematography is incredible, especially in scenes where the spider's shadow appears over a small town, getting larger and larger as it approaches. The sound department created the spider's movements by recording silk fabric being pulled across a microphone, mixed with slowed-down cat purrs. There is this absolutely incredible scene where the giant tarantula climbs over a mountain, and you can see every hair on its legs moving naturally, something that would be really difficult to achieve even with modern computer graphics.
You think to be able
The beastly fury. A monster leaving a trail.
The Deadly Mantis from 1957 gives us one of the most unique monster designs of the era. A giant praying mantis, frozen in Arctic ice for millions of years, thaws out and decides to terrorize military bases across North America. The special effects team constructed a 20-foot-long mantis puppet that required specialized rigging to film. The most impressive scenes show the mantis attacking Washington, D.C., where they combined the puppet footage with actual military archive footage to create a sense of scale and realism. The creature's movement was carefully studied from real praying mantises, and the way they animated its head turning and forelegs moving is remarkably accurate to actual insect behavior. The sound design team created its distinctive screech by combining metal grinding sounds with modified cricket chirps.
The Black Scorpion destroys communications.
The Black Scorpion from 1957 takes us deep into the volcanic regions of Mexico, where massive earthquakes have unleashed something terrifying from beneath the earth. The scorpions in this film are absolutely massive, and what makes them extra creepy is how realistic they look. The special effects team used detailed stop-motion animation, and they actually studied real scorpions to get the movements just right. The way these creatures move their claws and tails is incredibly lifelike. There is this absolutely unforgettable scene where they discover a whole nest of these monsters in an underground cavern with hundreds of smaller scorpions surrounding the big ones. The lighting in that scene, with just flashlight beams catching glimpses of shiny black carapaces, creates such an intense atmosphere. They created the scorpion sounds by combining elephant trumpets with tiger growls played backward.
It's down there. I don't know. I never saw anything like it before. It's this.
The monster that challenged the world from 1957 brings us something unique. Giant prehistoric mollusks awakened in the Salton Sea by earthquake testing. These creatures look like a cross between a slug and a caterpillar, but somehow they manage to be genuinely frightening. The practical effects team created full-size sections of the monsters that could emerge from water, and the way they film these scenes, usually at night with lots of fog, makes them incredibly effective. There is this amazing sequence where one of these creatures chases a scientist through flooded underground tunnels, and you can hear its weird, slithering sound echoing off the walls. The sound designers created that distinctive noise by recording wet leather being dragged across concrete and mixing it with processed whale songs.
Power that could turn people into stone, that could suddenly...
floor is bringing them right down here.
And once they...
The monolith monsters from 1957 gives us something completely different. Giant crystals that grow when exposed to water and then topple over, creating more crystals where they fall. While not a traditional monster, these towering black crystals are somehow more menacing than any creature. The effects team created miniature sets and used innovative filming techniques to make the crystals appear hundreds of feet tall. There is this incredible sequence where a rainstorm causes an entire field of crystals to grow and collapse, like massive dominoes destroying everything in their path. The sound design is particularly effective, using recordings of breaking glass and falling rocks, slowed down and layered to create this otherworldly crashing sound that makes every crystal collapse feel massive and threatening.
Here is nature gone mad, revealing...
The Cyclops from 1957 takes us on an expedition into remote Mexico, where radiation has created a terrifying one-eyed giant. This movie hits different because the monster actually used to be human, and you can still see traces of humanity in its distorted face. The makeup effects are incredibly detailed, especially the massive single eye that seems to follow the characters everywhere they go. There is this haunting scene where the creature recognizes someone from its past, and for just a moment you see this flicker of recognition in that huge eye. The film uses a lot of forced perspective shots to make the giant seem truly massive, and they built partial sets at different scales to make the size difference believable. The sound team created the monster's voice by recording human screams and playing them at different speeds simultaneously.
Chain reaction. A geometrical
The giant behemoth from 1959 brings us something like a radioactive take on the Loch Ness Monster terrorizing London. This massive aquatic dinosaur actually glows with radiation, and the effects team created this amazing bioluminescent effect using special lighting and paint on the stop-motion model. The scenes where it emerges from the Thames River are absolutely incredible, with steam rising from the water where its radioactive body makes contact. There is this unforgettable sequence where it walks through London streets at night, its body giving off this eerie blue glow that lights up the buildings around it. The sound designers created its roar by combining the sounds of elephant calls with the creaking of massive ship hulls under stress.
Somebody was hurt. There's blood all over this thing. That doesn't make headlines.
The giant Gila monster from 1959 might sound simple, but it is actually one of the more creative monster films of the era. Instead of using stop motion or puppets, they filmed a real Gila monster walking through miniature sets, and somehow it works brilliantly. The way they shot it, usually from low angles with careful lighting, makes this regular lizard look absolutely massive and threatening. There is this amazing scene where the monster derails a train, and they actually built a detailed miniature railroad for the sequence. The sound department created the creature's hiss by recording actual Gila monster sounds and mixing them with the sound of steam escaping from pressure valves.
They can melt and fuse parts of the caverns, explode the materials contained
Of the mighty Pacific, daring
Attack of the Crab Monsters from 1957 might be one of the most creative monster concepts of the decade. These giant crabs do not just attack people, they absorb the minds of their victims and can speak using their voices to lure more victims. The crew filmed real crabs for reference and created massive mechanical crab claws that could actually snap and grab things. There is this incredibly tense scene where the survivors hear their missing friend calling for help, only to realize it is actually one of the crabs using their friend's voice. The way they film the crab scenes, usually in dark caves with water dripping everywhere, creates this claustrophobic atmosphere that makes everything more intense. The sound designers created the crab voices by recording normal human dialogue underwater and mixing it with clicking sounds.
You know what? I have an eerie feeling that
The baranga pursues its prey.
From Hell It Came, from 1957, gives us something completely unique. A walking tree monster called the tabanga. This creature starts as an executed tribal prince who is resurrected as a walking tree stump with a face, seeking revenge. The costume design is incredible in its own weird way, with this massive tree trunk body and a face that somehow manages to look both threatening and slightly sad. There is this amazing sequence where the tabanga rises from its grave, with roots and vines slowly pulling away from its body as it stands up. The movement was created by a performer inside the suit, who had to practice walking with a specific swaying motion to mimic a tree in the wind. The sound team created its voice using processed recordings of creaking wood and deep tribal drums.
I'm not leaving here, Mrs. Hawthorne, until I get the answers to the
Alligator! Suspense. That will...
The Alligator People from 1959 takes body horror to a whole new level. The story follows people being transformed into human alligator hybrids deep in the Louisiana bayou. The makeup effects are surprisingly detailed and disturbing, showing the gradual transformation from human to reptile. The way they filmed it, using lots of shadows and fog in the swamp scenes, makes the transformations even more effective. There is this unforgettable scene where someone sees their reflection for the first time after the change begins, and the horror feels completely real. The sound department created unique voices for each stage of the transformation, starting with normal human voices that gradually acquire more reptilian characteristics.
Exist when he's been deprived of everything he's ever known or loved.
The Colossus of New York from 1958 brings us a different kind of monster, a 20-foot tall robot with the brain of a brilliant scientist. What makes this one special is how they handled the robot's movements. Instead of jerky mechanical motions, the Colossus moves with an eerie grace that makes it feel both human and inhuman at the same time. The costume was designed with internal lighting that made the robot's eyes glow from within, creating this incredibly unsettling effect. There is this powerful scene where the colossus realizes what he has become, and you can hear the humanity breaking through in his voice. The sound designers created his distinctive voice by running normal speech through early electronic modulators, creating something that sounds mechanical, but with traces of human emotion.
Out of all mankind's millions, only a handful is driven wild by their superstitious...
Monster from Green Hell from 1957 takes us to Africa, where radiation has created giant wasps in a remote valley. The practical effects team created massive wasp puppets with wingspans over 15 feet wide, and the way they filmed them against actual African landscape footage is surprisingly effective. The most intense scene shows these enormous insects swarming over a village, and the sound of their wings humming fills everything. The attention to detail is incredible. You can see individual hairs on their bodies and their compound eyes gleaming in the sunlight. The sound department created the wasp sounds by speeding up recordings of small aircraft propellers and mixing them with processed insect noises.
That's right. Would you all kindly watch?
Any country I have mentioned?
The brain from Planet Arous from 1957 might be one of the strangest monster movies ever made. The monster is literally a floating brain with glowing eyes that can possess people and make them super intelligent but evil. The effects team created the brain monster using a combination of puppetry and early animation techniques, making it pulse and throb in a way that is somehow both ridiculous and creepy. There is this fantastic scene where the brain creature floats through an old desert house, casting weird shadows on the walls. The sound designers created its distinctive pulsing noise by recording heartbeats underwater and mixing them with electronic tones.
Human element. Can man withstand the incredible? It was all up to the scientist and his beautiful assistant.
The Cosmic Monster from 1958 brings us one of the most unique threats: invisible creatures that become visible only when struck by electricity. Set in the English countryside, these aliens appear as shimmering, translucent shapes that distort the air around them. The special effects team created this amazing visual effect using heat waves and special lighting techniques that were way ahead of their time. There is this incredible scene where a lightning storm reveals dozens of these creatures surrounding a small village. The way they filmed it, with the monsters appearing and disappearing with each lightning flash, creates this incredibly tense atmosphere. The sound department created the creatures' otherworldly noises by running various electronic sounds backward and adding deep bass rumbles.
Creeping horror that hungers and thrives.
The Crawling Eye from 1958 takes us high into the Swiss Alps, where something terrifying is hiding in the clouds. The monsters are basically giant floating eyeballs with tentacles, and somehow they manage to be absolutely frightening. The effects team created these creatures using a combination of puppetry and fog effects, making them appear and disappear in the mountain mist. There is this unforgettable scene where one of these eyes emerges from the fog right next to a climber's shelter. The tentacles were carefully articulated to move in this weird, underwater way that looks completely alien. The sound designers created the monster's sounds by manipulating recordings of wind through mountain passes and adding processed squid noises. The Space Children from 1958 gives us a very different kind of monster. A giant glowing brain-like creature from outer space that communicates with children through telepathy. What makes this one fascinating is how they handled the alien scenes, using innovative lighting and practical effects to create this pulsing, bioluminescent mass that somehow feels both beautiful and unsettling. The effects team created the alien using a combination of latex, internal lighting, and careful puppetry that made it appear to breathe and move in an organic way. There is this incredible scene where the creature first reveals itself to the children, its entire body glowing with an inner light that illuminates the cave around them. The sound designers created its otherworldly communication sounds by running children's whispers through electronic modulators and mixing them with the sounds of ocean waves.
To every heart, disintegrates everyone it touches.
The H-Man from 1958 gives us a different kind of monster. A radioactive liquid creature that can dissolve humans on contact. What makes this one special is how they handled the dissolving effects, using innovative practical techniques that still look disturbing today. The effects team created this semi-transparent green slime that could flow and pulse in really unsettling ways. There is this amazing scene where the creature slides under a door and reforms on the other side, maintaining a vaguely human shape. The way they lit these scenes, usually with stark shadows and neon signs from the streets outside, creates this incredible film, noir meets horror atmosphere. The sound department created the creature's movements using recordings of thick liquids being poured, mixed with processed human breathing sounds. And remember that question about the giant claw? The creature was actually based on ancient Native American legends of the Thunderbird, but somewhere in the production process, it transformed into what looks like a space turkey. Sometimes the most memorable monsters are not the scariest ones, but the ones that make us smile every time we see them. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the forgotten giants of 1950s cinema. Which of these incredible creatures would you like to see return to the big screen? Let me know in the comments below. See you next time.